Albertan here. Live in a town south of Calgary. I don't have any scary ghost stories or anything like that, but I do have one story about something very strange that happened in the woods 3 years ago. It's fairly long, because I suck at green texting, and not all that fantastic, but I will write it down anyway, since it still gives me the willies to this day. So, one night in November when I was about 16, I was at a friend's house on the outskirts of town. There is a very dense forest right across the dirt road that we like to play flashlight tag in. There were about 6 of us that night, and only one of us had a flashlight. We all split up because, hey, it's flashlight tag. I find myself a good dried out riverbed to lay down in, and try to cover up with a few branches and some snow. After staying still for about 5 minutes, I noticed a change in the air. It went from being warm and windy to bitter cold and completely calm. I raised my head to see if anybody was hiding near me, and noticed a grey orb traveling from the tree line and into the riverbed directly in front of me. I initially thought that it was my buddy with the flashlight looking for me, but then I noticed that no light was present. Looking at this thing felt like staring directly into a light. I could see its outline when I blinked, just as if I were having a flashlight shone into my eyes, but it was a very dark grey colour, and oddly, very visible in the pitch black night. I stared at it for what must have been like 10 minutes or more, just waiting to see if it would move. I was scared to the point that I was holding my breath to prevent myself from breathing too loudly. The wind had died down, and there was absolute silence all around me. I could not hear my friends crunching through the woods like I did before, and I could not hear my buddy with the flashlight taunting us as he searched. My heart was beating so loudly that I was afraid this thing would hear me and come looking, but more so, I was afraid that because it wasn't moving, that it was staring right at me this entire time. I was about to stand up and see what would happen. I had almost convinced myself that it was just an illusion and I was overthinking it, but as soon as I built up the nerve to stand up, it began moving again, back into the forest on the opposite side of the riverbed. I kept watching it with my eyes. I did not dare move my head or make any noise at all. My heart was still beating so loudly, I could have sworn I was about to have a heart attack. I noticed that this grey orb remained bright when it moved into the trees again. I was fully aware there were trees that should have been obscuring my line of sight to it, but I could see this thing through the trees. It had gone from being about 20 meters away to 30 meters, gotten noticeably smaller in size as it moved, but remained the same brightness and visibility. It slowly raised into the air and into the treetops, at which point I lost sight of it. It took me less than 2 minutes of searching to find my buddies again, all of whom had been caught and gathered in a clearing in the woods. I told them about what I saw and urged them to pack it in for the night. They all said I was nuts and that nobody else saw anything. One of them saw a grey orb in the sky as we were arguing, exactly as I had described it. It was the opposite direction of the moon, and it was a cloudy night with no visible stars, so it was very clear that this was no moon or star that we were looking at. We watched it for a couple minutes, them being curious, and me feeling safe since I was with some friends again. 2 of them were absolutely positive that it was just some form of weather balloon. My guess is they heard that line on TV one time, and figured themselves to be experts. I mentioned that our buddy with the flashlight's parents owned all of the land for kilometers around us, and that it didn't make sense for somebody to jump fences, trespass, and go into the dead fucking middle of a heavily wooded area to launch weather balloons that barely even went that far into the sky. We all tried taking cell phone photos of it, but it just wasn't showing up on any of our cameras. We kept watching for another few minutes, when the stupider guy in our group grabbed the flashlight, shone it at the orb in the sky, and yelled at it with rambling insults. Again, he is the absolute biggest idiot of the group. The orb immediately shot down to treetop level, and again to what I assume was ground level, about 100 meters away from us. We all just collectively lost our shit, and began heading back to the house, which was a few hundred yards in the other direction. As we headed back, we all noticed at a couple different times that the Chinook winds stopped suddenly, and the air immediately became freezing cold and silent, just as I described, even through our winter apocalypse gear. Absolutely nobody was willing to look back or to the sides. We all just kept plugging on our way back to the house, and did not even want to know if we were being followed. Not one of us said a word the whole time. Everybody just pulled their hoods up and kept walking in silence. I am still friends with all of them today, about 3 years after it happened. When I asked them about it, they mostly figure it was just an optical illusion or some sort of weather balloon, despite the fact that we all agreed that night how ridiculous that theory was. One of them figures it was a UFO of some sort and that he has seen it since, but he believes in every alien story he hears, so I would not take his word on that. All I know is that I was the only one who got close enough for it to burn my eyes when I looked at it and see the way it was visible through the thick forest at ground level. I don't frequent X a lot, or ever, so I'm not all that well read on strange happenings like this one. But that was one of the experiences of my life that made me believe that there is weirder shit out there than I could possibly ever explain. Van guy here. It seems like most of the creepy shit is back east in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and so on. Although I went to a summer camp near Kelowna, BC, called Camp Oassi. It was about 2 kilometers down the road, around the Okanagan Lake, from a mental institution. The counselors there scared the shit out of us by saying that one, named Old Man Jenkins, had recently escaped, and that he had murdered 3 kids but pled insanity, and so he did not have to go to jail. The camp week started off alright. I was 7 or 8. We did a bunch of the regular summertime activities: canoeing, hiking, singing, sports, eating, crafts. It was technically an Anglican camp too, although not many kids there were actually religious, so we spent about half an hour a day doing Bible stuff too. Everyone's least favorite part for sure. I was in a cabin with 4 other kids, all of whom were older than me. I was pretty easy to pick on when I was young, so I still got picked on there, but I was having a good time regardless. A great time, actually. One of the best few days I can remember. But one thing that made everyone uneasy, even the counselors, was the cabin at the far end of the field. Unlike all of the other cabins which were clustered together around the main buildings in the lake, this one seemed small off in the distance, built into the forest hillside. But somehow at night, its figure seemed to grow larger with the shadows of the tall pine trees. Nobody was allowed to go on the other half of the field. I'd seen a kid kicked out who went there for fun earlier that week. Nobody had camped in that cabin for around 10 years, but nobody really knew why, just that it was forbidden. Midweek, I came back to the cabin at noon to get my bathing suit, to find that my teddy was gone. Just comforted me, I guess. I started to panic a bit. I'd had it since I was an infant, and it was almost like a friend to me. I figured one of the other kids had taken it, so when everyone got back at night, I asked about it. They teased me a bit, but nobody admitted to anything. I asked my counselor if he had seen it. He said no. The next few days I was pretty upset, and I could hardly sleep at night. Eventually, during crafts, one of the kids in my cabin told me that he saw a kid from another cabin take my teddy bear, but he did not know where he put it. At dinner, I confronted him. He laughed, and said he had put it in the cabin at the end of the field. At first, my reaction was just to go and get it, but I did not want to get kicked out. This was an expensive camp, and my parents were gone to the States for the week, so I'd have to get a relative to come all the way from Van to Kelowna to get me, so I could not do that. I told him to go get it, or else, an empty threat. I eventually ended up mentioning to a counselor that someone had taken it and put it in the cabin, but even he was not allowed to go there. I thought of telling on the kid and getting him kicked out, but thought better of it. I wanted to have at least a couple of friends out of this and not be seen as a rat, but I needed the teddy. There was no way I was leaving the camp without it, so I decided I would wait until night when all the counselors were asleep, and then I would go there myself and get it. That night I went outside at about 2 a.m., doing my best not to crunch on the gravel. I stayed near the edge of the forest. The moon was full, so it was light enough to see where I was going, but there were enough clouds that occasionally obscured it, so it was intermittent. At the edge of the field I hesitated, knowing I could be kicked out, and I was also a bit scared to be honest. But I figured I was already in enough trouble for being out at 2 a.m. anyway, and I really needed this teddy. So I went on, keeping my footsteps slow and quiet. The cabin was even further away than it seemed during the day. By this point I was hyper-aware, and had adrenaline pumping through me, on the watch for anyone or anything unusual. I tried the front door, locked. How had this kid gotten in there? I walked around the back, and saw a window that once had a glass pane, but was now empty. I wasn't tall enough, so I stacked some rocks and climbed through. The cabin was pitch black, save for the moonlight coming through the front door. I was shitting bricks. I felt near the front door for a light switch, found one, but no electricity. This was an all-wood cabin, but I could smell a bit of rotten wood, probably from the rainwater coming through the window, but to me, that smell could have been anything. I had brought a stick from outside, as if I could defend myself with it. This cabin, unlike the others, was 2 stories. After feeling around on the floor for a while for my teddy, I concluded it was not there, so I headed up the stairs. There was more light up here due to a window that ran the length of the wall, and almost went floor to ceiling. My footsteps creaked as I looked around the unmade bunk beds. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I was trying my best to breathe slowly and quietly, gripping my stick very tightly. Then I saw it, my teddy, lying on one of the top bunks near the window. I climbed the ladder, grabbed it, and jumped down. As soon as I landed, I felt something warm and moist on my neck, like something breathing right on your neck. I spun around, startled, and fell to the floor. I couldn't see very much in the gloom, so I could not make out anything. I got up, trembling, clutching bear in one hand and stick in another. This was also the first time I ever swore. I remember hearing my parents and older friends say things like fuck, so I said, "Fuck you, Jason," name of the kid who allegedly put my teddy there. I kept saying it over and over for making me come here like this. What an asshole. Fuck you, Jason. I kept saying it as I walked back downstairs, as I went to the window, pulled myself up, and jumped out into the forest. Fuck you, Jason, I muttered, looking at the ground. Fuck you, Jason. Fuck you. I looked back at the cabin from the side. The front door was now open, hanging ajar, but it had not been when I got there. I turned around to leave, facing back towards the field. That is when I saw it. One dark figure, standing just off to the side, near a tree. It let out a low growl, and started towards me with a natural speed. I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life. I ran for the field, trying to scream to alert someone. I could not breathe. All I could hear was the growls behind me, and at one point, I felt the warmness on my neck again. I could hear the footsteps. I kept trying to yell help all the way back to the cabin cluster, but sometimes you're just too scared for words. When I got back to the cabin, I opened the door, ran in, and slammed it shut behind me. No more footsteps. Everyone was awake now, asking me what was going on. I was crying and red-faced, unable to speak. I jumped up on my bed and looked through the window. I could just barely see the figure running back into the forest. The next day, the camp counselors called my relatives from Van to come get me, as I was too upset to leave my bed and could not stop trembling and holding my teddy. I've never been back since, but I heard that while Old Man Jenkins was just a story, someone did actually go missing from the mental institution that week and did not return. The counselors found nothing in that cabin when I told them, except for a bunch of rags that had not been there before, some needles, and a hatchet. My cousin is in the Coast Guard. He has been for over a decade now. He's not the kind of guy to lie or just make things up. He told me this story in the summer of 2022. This happened to him back in 2017. He was assigned to a lighthouse off the coast of Maine on a 2-week maintenance rotation. The place was called Madness Rock, and it's way out there. You can only get to it by boat or helicopter. It's nothing more than a jagged rocky island. It has just a single lighthouse and one auxiliary building that stores fuel and maintenance equipment. There is no power grid, no plumbing, and barely any cell signal. The lighthouse itself is automated, but it still requires occasional manual upkeep. This is why Coast Guard sends people out to it every year or so. Usually, it's a solo assignment. There had been strange electrical failures the year before though, so this one was different. For this trip, they decided to send 2 people. It would be my cousin, who I will call C, and another guy, I'll just call him D. The first few days were fine. Just boring really. To give you an idea, during the day they check the beacon mechanics, test the emergency batteries, refill the diesel generator, and scrape off layers of salt corrosion from the metal interior. At night they read, eat simple meals, and kill time playing cards. It was expected isolation. On the 4th night, C woke up around 2 in the morning feeling weird. Not sick and not in pain, just felt like something was wrong with the atmosphere. The air was heavier than usual, and he said it felt like standing in a room right before a thunderstorm. The sky was clear and silent outside at the time though. He sat up and looked around. It was dark. Then he noticed something. There was no rotation from the beacon. The lighthouse was supposed to send out a sweeping light beam every few seconds. Even during maintenance, this would happen. It was a huge deal if the light failed. He got up and shook Dee awake. The two of them made their way up the narrow spiral staircase to the top of the tower. When they got there, they found the gears that rotated the beacon were still moving. The actual light itself was not turning though. Something was jammed in the mechanism. It was a large dark piece of cloth. Something like a blanket or an old coat wedged deep into the gear assembly. The thing was soaked. It was covered in a slimy, mossy substance, and it smelled like rotting seaweed and mildew. They were both confused. The door had been locked and the windows were sealed. It did not make sense. They removed the fabric and tossed it. Then they went back to bed. The next night, the exact same thing happened again. Only this time, it was not the same type of fabric. It was smaller, looked like an old-fashioned scarf or a shawl. It was red and frayed at the edges, looked soaked through with what looked like ocean water. It even had tiny crustaceans clinging to it. They checked the doors, the windows, the supply closet, but everything was secure. From that night on, they began blocking their stairwell with heavy crates. On the 7th night, something happened that C can't explain. He said he was lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Then he heard D whispering from across the room, but he was not talking to C. He was murmuring to the corner of the room and saying strange, disconnected things like someone was standing there. C leaned up and asked what he was saying. D blinked slowly and looked confused. He told him he was not saying anything. But later that night, C woke again and found D sitting at the window. He was staring down at the rocks below. When he asked what he was doing, D said he thought he saw someone standing down there on the rocks the night before. He said it looked like someone was watching them and then disappeared when the light rotated back. D got weirder every day. He stopped sleeping. He stopped talking much. He just stared out the window for hours. Would just mutter about noises in the wall or about hearing voices from inside the stairwell. On the 9th night, they both heard footsteps on the stairs. Real, slow, deliberate footsteps, one after the other, coming down from the beacon room above. That night, they shoved a dresser in front of the bedroom door and slept with knives underneath their pillows. On the 11th night, they were woken up again by the beacon failing. This time, the beacon room door was wide open, completely swung open like someone had kicked it in. The beacon was not just stopped, it had been deliberately tampered with. The bulb was unscrewed and placed upright in the middle of the room. That thing is industrial grade. You can't just twist it off by hand without effort. D just kept muttering that someone had done it. Then C felt something brush against his back, something cold. He spun around, but no one was there. D had gone pale. He just kept pointing at the wall, whispering that he saw a hand come out of the bricks. They ran back down the stairs and locked themselves in the bedroom. C did not sleep at all. D started rocking back and forth in the corner, whispering to someone who was not there. The next morning, C used the emergency sat phone and called for an early pickup. Said there had been a serious mechanical failure. The boat showed up that afternoon. When they arrived, the crew asked them about the distress call they had made at 2:12 a.m. that morning. C had never made any call though. He did not touch the phone until daylight. The deckhand said they received a garbled call that came through with static and a voice saying something about someone being there with them. Then it cut out. D did not speak the entire ride back. He quit the Coast Guard a few months later and never told anyone what really happened out there. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. 3 weeks ago. It is my birthday. I live in Colorado, just stating this to get an idea. My friends pick me up and we all enjoy a great night, titty bar, hookah, and going up to Colorado University since my friend goes there and we were just fucking around. Well, it was about midnight, and he says there is this dorm room where a girl took her own life and it is supposed to be haunted. Well, whatever, it ain't spooky. We wait outside the main doors, waiting for someone to open it. The building is shaped like a U, and we are right in the middle of it. Almost all the lights are off, but the windows are open. In the middle section is the cafeteria with mini lights on the inside. My brain is fucking with me. I am constantly seeing dark figures. About 30 minutes pass by, and somebody opens the door. Shit just got real. Walk up the stairs until we get to this lonely ass door. My heart is fucking spaghettiing all over itself. We open it up, and this is the longest hallway I have ever seen, and in the middle it goes down a shorter hallway. Get to shorter hallway, and that is when it got fucked up. This door looked like the door that was protecting hell. It had 3 handles and 6 different locks on it. Just looking at this door makes me sick. My friend goes, "Just wait," and turns off the lights. Fuck. Decide to man up and touch the door. My arm instantly goes numb, and in the silence, I feel like I can hear voices. After about 30 minutes of that, we left. We leave, and I feel that I am being watched. I know it's a college, but not that kind of watched. I just felt weird. My friends start discussing science, since that is what one is majoring in. I am ahead of them, and my mind is breaking. I start crying, and getting thoughts of taking my own life. I feel like I have disappointed my parents, and that I'm just so sorry. Note that for being 20, my life is above par. I have broken eyesight of that building, but I just have this pulling sensation, making me want to go back. As we get a mile or so away, it fades, and I start to collect myself. I have no idea what the fuck happened, and I think I'm just going crazy. It's now around 2:30 a.m., almost witching hour, and we leave. When we were driving, the moon was full, and in a busy town. There were no cars, no streetlights or anything. I brought it up, and we had a debate over it, but this is what I came up with. I just broke up with my girlfriend after dating for 2 years, and I feel like that feeling I had of wanting to go back, actually needing to go back, was some sort of X-way telling me that the further you get away, the better you will be. I have the most respect for the paranormal side. This happened to me a few years ago. I was 18, just out of high school, and planning on going to Berea College. I have stories of that place too, but those are for another night. My dad had just essentially abandoned the family almost exactly a year earlier. My mom was out late with her sisters, celebrating the fact that my dad was finally gone for good, and I had recently gotten home from helping my cousin paint his house. So I was tired, and it was just me and my little brother. We did the usual, played PS3. I fried some catfish for dinner, and then we watched Evil Dead 2, because I figured that, at 13, he was finally old enough. After the movie, he went to bed, and I watched TV and began dozing off on the couch. I had not been asleep long. I know, because The Daily Show was still on, when I hear a loud thwap at the glass door to the back porch. I could see the back porch from the couch, and looked up as soon as I awoke and saw something running away. I ran to the door and looked outside, but there was nothing. My house is built on a hill, so even though from the front the living room is on the ground floor, from the back it is 1 story above the ground, and so is the porch. There is also a gate in front of the stairs that automatically closes behind you when you walk up to the porch. The only way whatever made that thwap could have gotten away before I reached the porch would be to jump over the side. Figuring some idiot, probably a drunk cousin, friend, or neighbor, had been trying to scare me, and then jumped over the porch railing to get away when I jumped up, I turned on the floodlight and looked around on the ground. There was no one there, but there was a large depression in the grass and mud, as if something big and heavy had landed there. Still groggy, and figuring it was just a stupid prank, I grabbed my flashlight and walked around the house looking for any people, and yelling at them to just stop being pricks and come out. I, of course, found no one. You never do in these tales, but I was finally beginning to fully wake up. That is when I noticed that there was something odd in the woods. Like I said, there's a lot of people, so we don't get many animals besides the occasional deer. But there is also always a ton of birds, even late at night, and they are always making noise. but there were no birds. There was some sort of rustling in the underbrush though, something big, and it did not move like a deer. If you listen, you can tell when deer are moving through the woods. They are quiet and light-footed. Whatever was there that night walked heavily, making a lot of noise. And again, I figured it was a person. Determined to find them and end the foolishness, I grabbed my walking stick and set off onto the trail. As I walked, I began to think how odd it was the birds were all quiet. Even when there were people around, they never seemed to stop singing. And the deeper I went, the stronger the smell got. These stories always have some odd smell, don't they? The truth is that most people don't pay attention to their nose, because everything has some sort of smell. But when something strange happens, your body turns all of your senses up to 11, and then you finally notice the smells around you. Anyways, it wasn't exactly a bad smell. Somewhat earthy, like dirt and vegetation. Not something you would want as an air freshener, but not going to make you puke, and not totally out of place in a forest. What made it odd though, and made it stand out, was just how strong it was. Way more than the usual smells of the woods. And there was a tinge of raw flesh. Not rotting, just raw. I could still hear whatever it was moving around, so I kept going. Starting to get a bit weirded out by everything, I became more wary, ready to use my walking stick as defense. Whenever I get bored or stressed, I like to imagine I'm in some video game. I know, that's dorky, but I grew up with games, and it helps me relax. Video games helped me when my relationship with my dad turned sour, and they've helped me deal with things. So that is what I started doing then. In my head, I pretended I was Naked Snake, looking for the end, or Cyan from Final Fantasy VI, moving through the Phantom Forest. That is when I saw what was making the noise. It suddenly leaped across the trail. Not ran or crawled, I saw it leap. This being a populated area, the trail was pretty wide. So wide that no normal person could leap over it, unless you were Michael Jordan maybe. This obviously was not MJ. It obviously was not human either. It was about human height, but the way it carried itself made it seem much heavier. The most unsettling things though, were the head and legs. It was way too dark, even with my flashlight, to make out much detail, but I could see the general shape. It had those digitigrade legs, the beast legs, you know, like a dog's hind legs, with all the extra bends, and standing on the toes with the ankle up in the air. And the head was weirdly small. But for just a moment, I swear it looked at me, and I could see the eye shine from two huge eyes. Even if it had a normal-sized head, those eyes were way too big, and the whole body seemed to have something hanging off of it, almost like bits of plants or fabric, or shaggy but patchy fur. And the smell was stronger than ever now. I could not escape it. The thing was moving much faster at that point, and I could hear it running through the woods, and it seemed to be trying to circle behind me maybe. I was afraid it was going to cut off my way home, so I began booking it back down the trail. Unfortunately, thanks to surgery that I had as a child, I have a bum knee, and I could not run for long. I tried to force myself to just keep going, but I messed up, and eventually I could not run anymore, and I tripped. I heard the thing get closer to me, and I started blindly swinging my walking stick. It connected with a crack, and it felt more like I hit stone than flesh, and it snapped my stick completely in half. And, unfortunately for you, but fortunately for me, that is it. That is all that happened. After I smacked the thing, I heard it run off. By the time my eyes were back open again, it was gone. I went home, locked myself in my room, and slept until late in the morning. Neither my brother or neighbors noticed anything at all that night. My mom wondered why my walking stick was lying broken by the back door, but that was the only sign anything had happened at all. There wasn't even any blood or fur stuck to the remains of the stick. Just nothing. Nothing at all. All I have left of that encounter are just my memories. I occasionally think I smell something, and the birds do occasionally go quiet, but there haven't been any events for years, and I've never run into that creature ever again in my life.